Thank you very much for joining us today into this MPA4Change Policy Bootcamp, Marine Protected Areas Facing the Climate Emergency. My name is Fernando Pinillos from Europar Federation. We are the hosting institution today, together with Oceanogami. And I work in the communications department of Europar Federation, and I'm also the project manager of MPA4Change from Europar side. So to start with, I would like to give you some housekeeping rules. Sophia, you could please move the slide. Okay, so first of all, please rename yourself in the participants menu. You can use your name and organization so we can easily identify you and address to you. During the speakers' presentations, you will be muted, and to interact, you can use the chat and to ask questions, greetings, or anything you would like. And there will be dedicated question and answer rounds between presentations and the interactive session. So you can use those rounds to just provide live interventions or ask questions. But my colleague, Patricia, who is the facilitator of this session, will be explaining a bit more on that, okay? Remember, this session is being recorded, so we encourage you to start your camera so we can see each other. But bear in mind that this recording will be later on available to the public, and they will be available at the MPA4Change website and also shared with the participants via email. Okay. Next slide, please. Just a reminder, so this is Europar hosted together with the Oceanogami event, but it's an MPA4Change online policy bootcamp. So MPA4Change is the Interreg Euro-MED project that aims to enhance the role of marine protected areas and restoration as nature-based solutions for climate change adaptation. As I said, organized by Europar Federation and Oceanogami with the support of the whole MPA4Change consortium. Next, please. So quick words about Europar Federation. Europar was founded in 1973. We represent national parks, regional and nature parks, marine protected areas, and peri-urban parks. And the aim of our organization at the time of its foundation was to support protected areas to fulfill their role as preservers of Europe's natural beauty. This was founded during the Cold War. And we are a membership association, so we come with more than 400 members spread in 40 countries around Europe. And our main work lines are to facilitate, organize, and publish different events and materials like networking events and conferences, seminars and workshops. We also host commission and task forces to discuss on different topics. We provide capacity building courses, case studies and toolkits, policy papers, and we also organize webinars and sessions like the one we are hosting today. Next, please. So that's all from my side. I would like to give the floor to Patricia Puig from Oceanogami, who will be the facilitator of the session. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Fernando, and everyone for being here. Good morning to everyone. So my name is Patricia Puig. I'm the founder of Oceanogami, and I will be facilitating today's session along with Maria Jimenez, who is a specialist in environmental policy and has been closely involved in the development along with me with the MPA4Change policy outputs that we will briefly talk today. So before we go into depth to this policy bootcamp, I would like to briefly set the scene. As we know, the Mediterranean is one of the most vulnerable regions to climate change and is warming around 20% faster than the global ocean average, which is already translated into more frequent marine headways, biodiversity loss, and increasing pressure on coastal ecosystems and livelihoods. And at the same time, fewer than 8% of marine protected areas are currently address the climate change adaptation in a structured way. And as you know, also, as only 0.04% also are under strict protection. This means that there is a clear and growing gap between the scale and urgency of climate impacts and the current capacity of MPAs to respond in climate smart way. So bringing this gap is precisely the challenge of MPA4Change and today's discussions that we are addressing. These are the objectives of the bootcamp. So first, we want to ensure a shared understanding of the MPA4Change policy recommendation on climate adaptation. These recommendations are grounded in scientific evidence, test tools, and the practical experience of MPAs across the Mediterranean. And second, we would like to move beyond the theory and reflect together on feasibility. So that means discussing the barriers, enable conditions, and institutional realities in your own national, regional, organization context. And third, we want to look ahead and identify concrete opportunities for regional alignment. In particular, we will explore how initiatives such as the 100 MPA-MED Alliance that Fernando will talk about later can support coordination, peer learning, and collective progress towards the climate resilient MPAs by 2030. So this is the agenda. This is summary of the agenda. The session, so we already had the welcome and introduction, and then we will have presenting a context on Mediterranean climate emergency and MPA for Ernesto Azzurro. And afterwards, we will have Arda presenting MPAs as natural-based solutions. Later, we will talk about the policy recommendations that came from the climate adaptation project. And we will present the 100 MPA-MED Alliance, and then we will have a short break. And then this session is intended to be very interactive. So we will have also, time to ask questions, and then also we will make 2 breakout rooms that I will explain later. One more focus on the MPA for MPA managers. So I would say from MPA to policy, and the other from policy to action. So this is 2 working groups that we will later discuss. So come back to the main room. And finally, we will have 2 case studies from Lorenzo. So there will be Portofino and Brigioni MPAs. So this is a summary. We will go to the next. It's important, as I say, this session is intended to be very participatory, So you are more than welcome to write questions and comments in the chat at any point during the session. When you do so, please start your questions. So then, the moderation team will address afterwards all the questions. Then we will give the chance. So first to the ones who want to speak, raise the hand, okay? And afterwards, we will address the written questions. So the idea is that, we interact as much as we can. Now it's time for, we give the floor to Dr. Ernesto Azzurro, Director of Research at the Italian Institute National Research Council, who will present the scientific evidence on the Mediterranean climate emergency and its implications for marine ecosystems in MPAs. Would you like to share the screen? Ernesto, can you share the screen? So, because you have a quite interactive presentation. So then, we need that you share. Thank you.
Can you see my screen? Yes.
Yes. If you can put it in full screen mode. Yes, that way. Fantastic.
Okay.
Yes.
So I have very short time. So good morning, everyone. And thank you for inviting me to this event. And in this presentation, I will try to highlight some of the rapid and profound signals of transformation that our sea, our ecosystem, Mediterranean ecosystem, are undergoing in relation to climate change. And we know that what we are witnessing today is not longer a distant scenario, but it's something that is happening right now before our eyes, and we can call climate emergency. This also because every year new evidence emerged that highlights the growing scale and acceleration of those changes. And this evidence is not only capturing the attention of our scientific community, but also the attention of citizens, journalists, and the wider public. So I thought that it was interesting to start from the news that circulated in the last few years. We have, for example, the blue crab invasions, and that spread, two species that spread in almost every Mediterranean country. We have the rapid spread of the lionfish, mass mortalities of bivalves, and we face a crisis in the small pelagic fish, and with declining stocks and shifting distribution. We observe outbreaks of fireworms and other worm affinity species, the collapse of Pinna nobilis, and many other similar and macroscopic things that are happening. And so everybody know that those are only few examples. So I could continue for many more slides. And what all this means, for sure, this is attracting these growing media attentions around these events and this forces to confront ourselves with a fundamental question, which is how our planet is really doing. And we know that this year, according to the Planetary Health Check 2025, the health of the planet is rapidly declining. This year, we overcome the seventh planet boundary, which is ocean acidification. So this means that several Earth life supporting systems risk to crossing critical thresholds with severe consequence for both ecosystem and society. Another evidence I wanted to cite came from the last Ocean State Report of Copernicus, which give us a clear update of the climate emergency. We see that the global ocean reached another record in spring 2024. And as far as the Mediterranean is concerned, we are proceeding at a global warming rate of 0.41 Celsius degree per decades. And I think that the global average rate is about 1.11 Celsius degree per grade. So we are 3 times faster. The warming is 3 times faster than the global ocean. This is quite alarming. Another alarming trend that was highlighted by the Copernicus report is about the marine heat waves that everybody know, which is a real emerging problem for the Mediterranean and also for the rest of the world, of the seas. And so now we can ask ourselves how this trajectory of change is affecting the Mediterranean MPAs. But this is far from a simple question, because climate change is not only about rising temperatures. So climate change, we know that involves a suite of interacting drivers, including ocean acidification, shifting salinity, altered circulation pattern, and many other variables. And so a more useful way to reformulate these questions will be which emerging trends should be on the radar of MPA managers and policymakers. So this is a quite important question, since everybody know that MPAs are not designed to protect marine biodiversity from the accelerating pressure of climate change. And so we have to identify the trends, but if we want to monitor those changes, we need also to identify the appropriate indicators, and we have to ask ourselves to which method we want to use. And the methods should be harmonized and easy to apply at both the local and regional scales. And this is precisely what we have been working on over the past years through a series of Interreg Euro-MED projects, including the MPA4Change initiative. And the overarching goal was to support MPAs facing the challenge of climate change, and ultimately to help them to develop effective climate change adaptation plan. So we developed 11 monitoring protocols to track climate-related changes in the Mediterranean MPAs. And now I will give you just some examples of some of the trends and indicators we consider today more relevant for Mediterranean MPAs. The first one is, of course, water temperature, which must be taken into account. And it will be important for MPAs not only to monitor the surface temperature. This we know that for this we have satellite data, but it's important to monitor the variation of water temperatures also through in the entire water column. This is also because heat waves hit marine fauna all over the water column. And if you look at the scientific literature, there is now an impressive body of evidence documenting the catastrophic mass mortalities of marine heat waves across several Mediterranean countries. And yes, I wanted to show you these videos of what happened just the summer 2023. In the Adriatic Sea, just in front of our institute, a mass mortality of mussels, which involved the entire Adriatic Sea and, well, catastrophic mass mortality, 100% of wild mussel that's died. Another important trend is the poleward migration of species. This is something that is happening all over the world, and this is reshaping our Mediterranean fauna. Things that our biodiversity, Mediterranean biodiversity, is characterized by a mix of species with different thermal affinities. So climate change is reshuffling those species, their abundances, with cold water species that are declining, warm water species that are rising up, and on top of this, we have the arrival of tropical invaders, especially from the Suez Canal. The biological invasion of the Mediterranean is another important trend we need to monitor. What we can call the tropicalization of the Mediterranean. Today, we have more than 1,000 non-indigenous species in the Mediterranean. Almost 800 of those species have established permanent population in the Mediterranean Sea. Many of them have a tropical affinity, and they are the winners of our times. And if we only take exotic fish species, we can count more than 230 species today in the Mediterranean. So every week we have a new report in the new record of in the scientific literature of a new species, new non-indigenous species, or species that is conquering a new geographical sectors in the Mediterranean Sea. So it's important for MPA to monitor this phenomenon. I wanted to recall you that we have also a nice tool, and it's a new tool on the web. We can be freely accessed. That it's ORMEF GeoPortal. So with the ORMEF GeoPortal, you can MPAs can check the species that are at the border, that are coming to their areas. This is a very nice tool which can be used by MPAs that take, for instance, the rapid expansion of the lionfish. This is a map that we prepared a few weeks ago for the SEAS. And so MPA that are at the boundaries of the invasion front should be alerted for this upcoming invasion. And we know that according to our climate change scenarios and models, we know that marine protected areas of the Mediterranean Sea will be increasingly invaded by species of tropical origins. There are many other trends that I wanted to show you. For example, the rise of pathogens and the interaction between the new pathogens and climate change, warming temperature. This is, for example, the outbreaks of nodavirus, which is hitting the population of dusky groupers and also many other species, fish species of the Mediterranean. We have, of course, the Pinna nobile crisis. All this is reshaping the Mediterranean ecosystem in a system where we can recognize many losers and a few winners. And in its most extreme manifestation, this is reshaping the Mediterranean in a system, an ecosystem full of biodiversity where underwater deserts are advancing. And this phenomenon in which cold water species disappear and the few winners, the warm water affinity species are taking place. It's a phenomenon that already characterizes large areas of the Eastern Mediterranean where many underwater deserts already exist. And unfortunately, these kind of irreversible changes were neither studied, not anticipated in the Eastern Mediterranean. And we hope that this should serve as a warning for the rest of the Mediterranean MPAs, including those in the central and west sectors, which will be increasingly affected by climate change impacts in the next decades. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ernesto, for sharing these insights on the Mediterranean climate impacts. And before we move to the next speaker, I wanted to know a bit better the audience that we have today. So we have a short questionnaire. I see now that we are 65 participants. So it would be fantastic if you can you launch, Fernando? Perfect. We have just launched a questionnaire asking what is your current job or role and position. If you are an MPA manager, technical staff, policymaker or policy expert, researcher or other, you can also type in the chat if you or other so we know more about you. Fantastic. So I see we have a quite good mix. We will wait a bit to have more answers. We have now 37 answers. Yeah, so that's great to know. Yes, we have at the moment around 15% policymakers, 29% MPA managers, technical staff, 29% researchers, and 27% others. So this is a great mix for later during the discussion session where we will have two working groups, one more aimed to the policy makers, another to the MPA managers, technical staff. But if you are not either of these groups, you can choose where to work with. Fantastic. So we will move now to the next speaker of today's session. So we have today with us Yaprak Arda from IUCN Mediterranean, who will explain how MPA functions as nature-based solutions for climate change adaptation and why this role needs to be strengthened through policy frameworks. Thank you, Yaprak. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone, and thanks for your invitation to the webinar. And also thanks for setting the scene. So I'm Yaprak Arda. I'm the Marine Program Officer of IUCN Med. Today I will be talking about MPAs as a nature-based solutions for climate change. So next, please. So just before moving into detail, I would like to maybe remind again or highlight again the definition of nature-based solutions, because this is quite crucial in the conservation aspect. So nature-based solutions, as we all know, are defined as actions to protect, conserve, restore, sustainably use and manage natural or modified terrestrial, freshwater, coastal and marine ecosystems, which addresses social, economic, and environmental challenges effectively and adaptively, while simultaneously providing human well-being, ecosystem services, and resilience and biodiversity benefits. So at the heart of the nature-based solutions, we have the ecosystems, we have environment, we have nature, but we also have the human well-being as well. And nature-based solutions are basically made up of 8 criteria. 28 indicators in total. And as of the previous IUCN Congress, the nature-based solutions of IUCN has been updated. So the standards and the criteria have been updated. So you can definitely have an access to the updated version of the nature-based solutions of IUCN through the NBS platform of IUCN. Next slide. So we know that nature-based solutions are playing a crucial role in influencing the policy. So we see that nature-based solutions are at the heart of many regional, international policy frames, starting from the biodiversity frameworks all the way to nationally determined contributions, to national action plans. And so you see that it also has an impact on the financial aspects of nature conservation as well. And of course, nature-based solutions are at the heart of IUCN. So we know that certain international frames use nature-based solution as a crucial tool to mitigate for conservation losses. For ecosystem and habitat losses and for species losses. So we know that this standard is definitely a crucial tool to be applied when designing MPAs or when designing in protected areas or even when designing projects. So next slide, please. So how do we use the standards? I don't know if you're familiar with the Nature-Based Solutions platform, but when you log into the Nature-Based platform, there is actually a system that you can assess the nature-based solutions of a project, of the site that you are working in. So there are different, you can just upload your proposal and interventions into the platform and run it against the self-assessment tool. And you will be able to have an idea about if your project, if your proposal, or if what you're designing is in alignment with nature-based solution standards or not. So you can basically log into the system, you can go through the self-assessment tool, and this can actually help you to design your projects, your proposals, your conservation goals. So this definitely plays a crucial role in designing these conservation actions. So these nature-based solutions, they are piloted across many regions in the world, from Africa all the way to Oceania, and it is applied to varied ecosystems based upon different societal challenges and, of course, action types as well. Next slide, please. And one more click, please. So when you have a proposal or a project, and if you were to run it against the nature-based solutions standards, in the end, you will be getting this color scheme. And this color scheme will definitely tell you where your actions are falling in terms of the nature-based solution standards. So you see their color codes, and each color code has its own explanation. And from the color codes, you can understand if your actions or activities are oriented in alignment with nature-based solutions. If not, if it's in the red category or if it's in the orange category, well, you can also try to find the ways to improve how those colors can actually turn into green so that your actions and activities can be in alignment with nature-based solutions. So next slide, please. So why MPAs are nature-based solutions for climate adaptation? So we all know that MPAs play a crucial role. We know that we have the target 3, which is shortly coming in 5 years. And we know that MPAs play a crucial role in reaching these targets, but not just in that, but also they are crucial in adapting to changing climates at the moment. So MPAs, and nature-based solutions, they help to support reduced non-climate stressors such as the fishing pressures, habitat loss, so ecosystems keep their adaptive capacity. So in the end, we will have healthier ecosystems that can resist and recover from climate impacts in a more resilient way. So they also can protect and restore blue carbon habitats such as the seagrass ecosystems or the mangroves that both can buffer the coastline and sequester carbon, providing both adaptation and mitigation as co-benefits. And also they can serve as climate refugee and connectivity nodes for species shifting ranges. As long as they're well-designed MPA networks, they can give the migration pathways and refuge sites for these critically important species. Next slide, please. So how do we operationalize the MPAs as nature-based solutions? So we can approach it in different ways. So we first need to understand the change. So we have to know the shifting baselines. We have to know the baselines. We have to monitor the past, the present, and projected environmental and ecological and social changes of the future. And we have to use climate vulnerability assessments and scenario planning and indigenous peoples' knowledge to have the understanding of this shifting baselines. And also, we can strengthen the adaptation and resilience. We can design MPAs for connectivity, climate change refugia, replication, and representativeness. And we can reduce non-climate stressors, such as the ones aforementioned, to enhance ecosystem adaptive capacity. We can also ensure equity and inclusivity. We can engage indigenous people and local communities in designing these, and we can co-develop objectives and governance arrangements with the key stakeholders. And we can generate a holistic co-benefits by delivering climate adaptation, mitigation, food security, coastal protection, and livelihoods together, all through operationalizing MPAs as nature-based solutions. So next slide, please. So what can be some specific adaptation pathways through which MPAs can function as nature-based solutions? So production of blue carbon ecosystems, such as the seagrass meadows in the Mediterranean, for example. They can contribute to coastal protection from storms and erosion, carbon sequestration and storage, ecosystem recovery after climate shocks. They can they can act as like climate refugiate, and dynamic protection MPAs can safeguard areas expected to experience slower climate change, support future species distributions as range shifts. And also network level resilience is very important, especially in well-designed MPA networks. They can provide insurance by protecting species across multiple locations and allowing for failure in some sites while others persist and resist to these changing conditions. So next slide, please. I would like to give a few examples from the Mediterranean and also at the global level about some of the MPAs being used as nature-based solutions to mitigate the changing climate impacts. So currently, as IUCN-MED, we are coordinating a project called RESCOM, which is the strengthening the resilience of ecosystems in the Mediterranean. And this project is taking place in 9 different pilot sites in the Mediterranean. And in each site, there are different ecosystems. And of course, based on each different ecosystem and the need of the ecosystem, different nature-based solution applications are being implemented in the region. So next slide, please. So in one of the pilot sites, which is Capo Carbonara Marine Protected Area, one of the main focus of applying nature-based solution is actually through the restoration of Posidonia oceanica meadows, which we all know are essential for the balance of the marine ecosystems. And through these activities at this site, there is an active restoration for Posidonia oceanica, as well as indirect restoration and nature-based solution implementation in the region, which includes reducing anthropogenic impacts such as illegal anchoring and protecting against pollution, including fuel and anti-fouling spills as well. In addition to these activities, there are also many other activities happening in this site involving nature-based solutions, but this is one of the examples from Capo Carbonara using nature-based solutions in an MPA as a mitigation measure. Next slide, please. So if we were to look at, well, there are many examples in the Mediterranean, but as I have 10 minutes, I could only give you one example that we've been applying as IUCN-MED in the Mediterranean region. But of course, there are many examples in the Mediterranean as well as many examples in the world. So if we were to look at some of the global examples, we can see that in different MPAs, in different protected areas, there are different nature-based solutions applications. Such as there are oyster reef restoration happening in the States. There are mangrove restoration coupled with livelihood aquaculture happening in Vietnam. There's coral reef restoration happening in the Maldives. There's kelp forest restoration happening in the States. So there are different approaches in the MPAs by implementing nature-based solutions at the global level. And these examples actually can be taken as best practices to be implemented in the Mediterranean. Actually, one of the coral reef restorations examples, we are taking it as an example, and we're trying to apply it in a Northern Aegean MPA for the coral reef restoration in Turkey. So we are actually taking these examples, and by applying nature-based solutions, we are trying to support the MPAs as much as possible as we can. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, there are many knowledge products of IUCN that you can access freely on the IUCN website. So there is the Nature-Based Solutions platform, and there's also many publications and many tools that you can use. There's also a publication which was recently announced by IUCN, which is the Establishing Marine Protected Areas in a Changing Climate, which definitely can be useful. There are also other publications such as Nature-Based Solutions in the Mediterranean region, having a look back and also moving forward. So you can definitely explore more about these nature-based solutions and protected areas and MPAs from the perspective of IUCN through our platform. So, well, next slide, please. So thank you very much. And if you were to have any further questions after the webinar, you can always reach out to me and to our IUCN nature-based solutions experts as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Japrak, for your presentation. We will later have time for questions for everyone. So please, as a reminder, write them in the chat. So later we can tackle your questions. So now I wanted to briefly introduce the MPA4Change project, which is from its base, this bootcamp. Is the framework that brings these elements together at the Mediterranean scale, and it's an Interreg Euro-MED project linking concrete pilot actions in MPAs with regional policy frameworks, so that on-the-ground experience can inform policy and strategic planning. So the project focuses in 3 pillars: validated climate monitoring and restoration toolkits, policy, advocacy, visibility, and capacity building to support implementation, such as is this bootcamp. So as you see, this is the project duration from 2024 to this year. And then here are the partners from TSIC, Portofino, Blijuni, so some MPAs, CNR, Dan Europe, University of Vigo, and others. And it is coordinated by Europal Federation. It's not, the MPA4Change is not only about this technical guidance, but also about translating knowledge into policy action. So the project delivers 7 validated adaptation toolkits, and then they come from climate monitoring, risk assessment, participation, planning, and communication. And these tools have been tested and refined across Mediterranean MPAs and are grounded in real management experience. However, there is a key lesson that the tools alone are not enough. So without the supportive policy frameworks, governance, and financing, the implementation remains limited. So this is why MPA4Change complements the toolkits with policy recommendations, and then that I will explain now in a bit. Here we have this slide summarize the key evidence from the MPA4Change toolkits that I was talking about. So they show that MPAs already have a strong technical capacity to assess the vulnerability, detect climate impacts, prioritize actions, and implement nature-based solutions. However, the same evidence highlights that there are structural barriers. So, for example, outdated management plans, weak climate mandates, fragmented monitoring, limited financing, and uneven capacity. We will these barriers during our session, working group session. The conclusion is that there is technical readiness, so exists this technical readiness, but policy readiness needs to catch up. So we need to do more for the policy parts, and this is exactly what's the gap that MPA4Change policy recommendations are designed to address, and this is why we also developed these 2 policy briefs within the project. So this was developed by all the partners with collaboration of all the partners and Maria and me from Oceanogamy. This policy brief 1 launches the 100 MPA Alliance that now Fernando will explain. And it's a call to action for MPA managers to commit to climate change adaptation by 2030. And the policy brief 2 focuses on the uptake of the validated MPA4Change toolkits that I was talking before, and it addresses mainly to policymakers and institutions. All these policy briefs, they are addressed mainly to policymakers, but also to MPA managers or other stakeholders and founders. So it highlights both that what MPAs can already do and the policy, governance, and financing conditions need to scale implementation. And together, these two briefs links on the ground action with regional and European policy frameworks. Actually, the first one is already published, so you can access it to the website. I think there's already in the chat. And the second one will be soon available. Going to the next. So I will, briefly talk about the policy brief 2. So we develop a series of climate change adaptation fact sheets that comes from the toolkits. And you have that available also on the website, and you can use that. I mean, the session is going to be quite brief, but you have that as a material, and we will keep updating these fact sheets. This presents a small number of concrete adaptation actions together with their feasibility and enable conditions. And they also clear link to relevant policy frameworks, real implementation examples, and the main barriers on support needed to identify in practice. And these fact sheets are designed as practical working tools, and they will inform the basis for the working group of what I'm saying now. So you are more invited to read them when you have some time and reflect. We will reflect today because for the session on the feasibility and the barriers and enable conditions in your own context. So next, I will. Sorry. You can go next, please. No, sorry, the one before. Yes. Okay. Thank you. This is example. Sorry, I missed that. This slide shows an example of one of the climate adaptation fact sheets. So this is focused on climate vulnerability assessment. So on the left, you can see that the type of actions proposed, and these include vulnerability assessment, update of the management plan, prioritizing habitats and species of restoration. And then we have feasibility and enablers. So yes, we will discuss that in today's session. So I will now give the hand over to Maria Jimenez, and she is the specialist on environmental policy. So she will now talk about the development of the MPA4Change policy recommendation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Patricia. I will try to be brief in my presentation to leave time to discussion and question. In this slide, we can see the first two policy recommendations focusing on integrating climate adaptation in MPA governance and make a strong alignment with Mediterranean and EU frameworks. We can see that the use to 100 MPA Alliance as a regional implementation accelerator. Next, please. And the remaining recommendation address long-term financing and implementation capacity, multi-year budget, access to EU funding, instrument training, expert support, and peer learning, and essential to move from pilot action to systemic change. Next, please. Well, in this slide, it's very important to detail that the relevance, the key message is that the facts are not just technical guidance. Each proposed adaptation action is deliberately framed to fit within existing policy commitment and reporting systems. First, the EU Nature Restoration Law, because many of the actions relate directly to marine restoration and resilience requirement, and increasingly funding and compliance with follow those obligations. Second, SEPBio under the Barcelona Convention context, particularly strategic objective 2, which focuses on climate-smart management and intensify resilience in Mediterranean protected areas. Third, IMAP, the Integrated Monitoring and Assessment Program, because several actions aim to generate standardized monitoring and reporting outputs that align with regional indicator and assessment processes. And finally, the EU Biodiversity Strategy, especially Target 3, broader integration of adaptation into conservation to planning and implementation. So, why does this matter in practice? Because it reinforces institutional legitimacy. It shows that what MPAs are doing on the ground is not extra work, but part of what policy already requires. It also supports funding readiness because donors and EU instruments increasingly look for clear alignment with these frameworks. And it ensures coherence from site-level action to regional and EU policy objectives. This is the logic behind the fact sheet, to make adaptation action implementable, defensible, and fundable. And thank you.
Thank you, Maria. So I will now give the floor to Fernando Pinillos. He is the Communication Officer and MPA4Change Manager at Europark Federation. And he will introduce the 100 MPA-MED Alliance, outlining its objectives, its role within the MPA4Change, and how it is designed to support the regional alignment and collective action on climate adaptation. Fernando.
Thank you, Patricia. Well, I already introduced
myself
at the beginning. You can hear me well, I guess. Okay, so I would like to briefly introduce the 100 MPA-MED Alliance, or how we move from these policy recommendations into practice, from this policy vision, how we can make it real and implement it on the ground. Okay, so the 100 MPA-MED Alliance is a collaborative initiative that aims to enhance the resilience of climate change and effectiveness of the Mediterranean MPA system. To do so, we promote the integration of climate adaptation strategies in 100 MPAs across the basin, across the Mediterranean by 2030. So that's our foremost objective, okay? I would like to give you a bit of context where this initiative comes from. So the 100 MPA-MED Alliance has been built within MPA4Change project, a project that we are finalizing the implementation phase this month, although it will still have some activities until March 2026. So it's a project that is already closing. So this initiative was created with a look into the future to allow the long-term implementation of the climate adaptation plans after the closure of MPA4Change. So all this experience is capitalized and is not lost or stopped, okay? What we do with the Alliance is to provide an operational framework. So it's not a project per se, it's a collaboration framework that will allow the supporting partners and institutions and MPAs engaged to continue carrying out the work with this guidance and with this experience that we have acquired during the last decade. And it also is a tool for communicating and engage with other organizations and MPAs that would like to adhere to this, let's call it network or framework, okay, of collaboration. So for you to understand a bit better, the part of the MPA4Change project consortium is conformed by organizations and experts that have been working on the elaboration on the development of climate adaptation tools for over a decade, okay? So it started with a pilot phase that was carried out through MPA Adapt project, in which 5 MPAs were involved to develop and test climate change adaptation tools. Afterwards, in 2019, there was an upscaling phase done through MPA Engage project, in which 5 more MPAs, 5 additional MPAs collaborated in consolidating the tools and creating the toolkits that we are transferring, that we are using today for climate change adaptation. And it was also the time to start drafting a training program for MPA managers to be able or to build their capacity to build to use these toolkits. And with in 2024, sorry for the mistake in the number of the presentation, in 2024 we started MPA4Change, a 2 years duration project that, as I said, is closing now. And it confirms the capitalization phase of all this experience and also of the tools that have been developed during these years. So in MPA4Change, 2 additional MPAs have joined the efforts. Pretty much we have been working in fine-tuning the toolkits and consolidating the training or the capacity building resources by providing, for example, hybrid training and face-to-face training in 4 different locations of the Mediterranean during these previous 2 years. Okay. Next slide, please. So for you to understand, the 100 MPA MED Alliance work is divided in 3 pillars, which were mentioned before when my colleague was explaining MPA4Change. So we're not inventing nothing new. We just like moving forward with what we have. So the transfer of the toolkits are the same toolkits, and the actions that we are carrying out are pretty much an extension of what has been done during MPA4Change. So the main pillars of the 100 MPA MED Alliance is the provision, first of all, provision of ready-to-use toolkits, validated and consolidated tools that have been tested during these previous years for climate change adaptations in marine protected areas. So together with this, we will offer a training program that we have been offering during this project as well, which I will briefly explain later. The second pillar is a dedicated long-term assistant through a roster or through a group of experts. So the functions of this roster are the effective application of the climate change adaptation toolkits and to provide tailored support and continuous mentoring to those MPAs that would like to adhere to, that would like to implement climate adaptation plans. Okay. And with the third pillar is the policy and advocacy actions to enhance the role and to promote MPAs as nature-based solutions to face the climate emergency. So the activities that we have been carrying out are aiming to support the integration of climate change adaptation plans and these specific toolkits that we have produced into European, national, and regional policy frameworks, and also to foster the collaboration in the Mediterranean. Next slide, please. So briefly, the capacity building opportunities that we offer through the Alliance and that were offered through MPA4Change, meaning that we will continue to offer these capacity building resources for MPA managers, are a set of 7 toolkits on different matters regarding climate change adaptation that were explained before, and that are available through 2 platforms: the European Nature Academy e-learning platform hosted by Europark and the Dance Europe e-learning platform hosted by Dan Europe Foundation of Malta. So difference between both of them, the materials are the same. The only difference is that we target different audiences. So Europark, as a protected area managers or protected area network, is targeting managers of protected areas, all kinds, but in this case relates to marine protected areas. And then Europe's targets citizen science practitioners and citizen science activities organizers. You have the links here in the presentation that will be distributed later for what you would like to get into the e-learning platforms. Next slide, please. And almost to finish, the vision of the 100 MPA MED Alliance is the creation of lighthouses for climate change adaptation. So those MPAs that adhere to the 100 MPA MED Alliance and start the implementation of climate change adaptation plans will also serve as inspiration and provide guidance to their neighboring MPAs. As you probably know, there are more than 1,000 MPAs in the Mediterranean. And the guidance that they will provide and the inspiration they will serve for will be to implement these climate change adaptation strategies. These MPAs and persons conforming or experts conforming these MPAs management boards will also be able to join the roster of experts. So we will increase and we will provide support to the idea is to provide all over the Mediterranean. And also very important through the creation of these lighthouses for adaptation, instead of having a centralized area for where the climate change adaptation plans are going to be exported. The idea is to have a great regional impact across the whole Mediterranean through the spread of these MPAs that are adhering to the 100 MPA Meta Alliance. With this, having all these MPAs spread across the region, we can spread best practice, promote regional collaboration, and strengthen conservation all over the basin. Next slide, please. So just to finalize, there are 3 different ways in which persons or organizations can join the 100 MPA Meta Alliance and support us in building a climate resilient Mediterranean. First, for policymakers, we are encouraging them to integrate the climate adaptation toolkits into different levels of conservation, into different frameworks, EU regional and national policy frameworks. For MPA managers, you can always join the Alliance and apply climate change adaptation toolkits or show your interest to us. I will speak now. We provide later the contact details. And for funders and donors, you can support the implementation of these climate change adaptation plans and also the capacity building. So to follow us, you can use our LinkedIn page, and we also have a dedicated website for the 100 MPA Meta Alliance, which will be after the MPA4Change closure, the main reference site or point of communication. We already have key actors on the Mediterranean that have joined and supported the 100 MPA Meta Alliance, and we would like to appreciate from here their collaboration and participation. And that's all from my side, I think.
Thank you very much, Fernando. So now it's time for questions before the break and the group work. So please raise your hand if you have any questions. We will read this if anyone raised their hand. If not, we have already quite a lot of written questions that I can read through and ask to the speakers. Yes, that's good. We can see each other. So, okay, I will read one question and then later we'll check if anyone raised their hand. So we have 2 questions actually for Ernesto. How do you think the rise in temperature of 0.41 centigrades per year will impact any restoration activities in the Mediterranean? And the second, if it makes sense to try to combat invasive species, or should we just looking at living the new normal? Ernesto, you are mute. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Okay, sorry. Thank you for the questions. I was saying that 2 very important questions. The first one is really important because it is clear that any restoration activity or strategy must consider climate change projections, especially because every species ecosystem has it's related to temperature. So it will be extremely important to consider not only the present scenario, but also projections. And when planning restoration activity in marine protected areas, but also beyond. And this is something that really matters for marine ecosystems. The second question it's also really important because it is true. And non-indigenous species, especially those tropical invaders that are entering the Mediterranean, are not only many of those species are at the same time the cause of the loss of biodiversity. For example, the lionfish, because predates juveniles, and it's a very impactful predators, or the rabbitfish, which is a habitat destructor because it's grazed to the bottom, the algal covering. But at the same time, those species are also compensating the loss of biodiversity because of the climate changes. And this is extremely clear in the easternmost part of the Mediterranean. So consider that we cannot stop the process. One of the possibilities to adapt to this process is to learn how to use and to valorize these resources, because actually many of those species are at the moment a resource for the Eastern Mediterranean. And then we should ask to ourselves, how would be the Eastern Mediterranean without those species? So probably it will be even more poor in biodiversity, at least for some taxa. So those are open questions. There's kind of rich discussion, scientific discussion in this moment. It's kind of a change of paradigm also in the fishery. So, and I think that marine protected areas could play and should play a role in this discussion and in general in the process of adaptation to this big and rapid change we are facing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So then we go to the, in case there's anyone who would like to add something, raise their hand, ask any questions or give a comment. Okay, so we will go then to next question to Arda, Yaprak Arda. Is that nature-based solutions to do active restoration? What is your opinion about human intervention on ecosystem restoration? And the second question is, are there any pilot studies in the southern Mediterranean countries, if you can give some examples? Thank you. Yes, you're mute as well. Yeah, Brad. Yes. Thank you. I cannot hear you. Okay. If you cannot talk right now, you are mute, but maybe you cannot talk right now. Okay. So we will go, maybe you can write it in the chat, the answer. Is that fine? It's perfect.
Sorry, Japrak. Sorry, can you try to unmute now?
Yes, now I can. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Apologies because my Zoom collapsed in my computer. I had to log through my mobile, and that's why I couldn't unmute myself because I was not allowed. So apologies for this technological mishap. So regarding the two questions, yes, nature-based solutions can also be active restoration. It can be depending on the project, depending on the implementation, it can be active restoration. So it just depends on your project, on your activities. So it's just the way that you design those activities. But yes, active restoration can definitely be considered as nature-based solutions. And the second part of the question, so well, as IUCN, we're not here to engineer the nature, but we hope to enable ecosystems to recover to the capacity that they can function, adapt, and sustain and be resilient. So that's why we have nature-based solution standards to ensure that humans are not intervening in a way to degrade the ecosystems and nature. We are trying to establish these standards so that there is also like a line, and is, let's say, like a red line that we don't cross as humans. But especially in ecosystems that are very much degraded, human intervention is much needed. Of course, we support the natural recovery of the ecosystems, but we know that from time to time we have to intervene. But that's why we have these standards and tools to ensure that we don't cross certain lines as humans when intervening with nature. And then regarding the question for the Southern Mediterranean, the project that I mentioned, the RESCOM project, have actually 6 pilot sites in the Southern Mediterranean in different countries in the Northern African region, focusing on different ecosystems with different implementing activities. And this is just one project. There are many other projects that are happening in the Southern Mediterranean, focusing on MPAs and also implementation of nature-based solutions. So, yeah.
Thank you, Japrak, also for giving that examples. So we have little time at the moment, but we'll tackle a couple of more questions, and then we will go to the break. So this is a general one, but I think it's very relevant. Often protected area managers are in a position that they see the impacts of climate change in the area, but they really cannot influence the root cause of climate change. And is that really a global threat that needs global actions? What would you recommend them to do in this situation? I guess maybe.
Maybe
Yeah,
I can answer.
Yes. Okay, perfect.
Hello. Hello.
Thank you, Lorenzo.
I'm Lorenzo from Portofino MPA in Italy. So yours is a right question, because how I say often is that the climate change is a train that hit us in the face, and we cannot do anything to do. No, you cannot. Also, if someone tell to put ice in the water, no, doesn't work. No, so the phenomenon is global. But in an MPA, we can test and we can do some action that is not strictly related to climate change, because I think that there are 2 kind of impact. Okay, there is the climate change impact, and we cannot do anything, let's say, on local scale. And then there is the direct human impact, as I say. So I don't know, the impact of fishing on coralligenos, the anchoring and Posidonia, and so on. So if we have some management action, like I don't know, forbid the fishing, some fishing gear, or the anchoring of Posidonia, we help our habitat to be more healthy in general. And maybe, because I think that in science the magical word is maybe, they will be less sensitive and more resilient to the climate change. So it's true that we cannot do miracles. We cannot do. But we can do little things that maybe can help to face the impact of climate change. And I think that we cannot do more, but if we can try to do this, I think that something good probably happen.
Thank you, Lorenzo. That's great advice. And with that, I think we can go to the pause. We still have some questions, but I think they can get answered in the chat, or if not, we will have at the end of the session also a bit of time. So we have now 10 minutes paused. Please be back at 11:20 set. So in the 10 minutes, I'll give you 11 minutes, okay? And then yes, unless Fernando, would you like to add something before the break?
Yes, I would like to add just one important comment. So we would like to give a special thanks to the Union for the Mediterranean, and with a special emphasis to Alessandra Sensi for the support they have provided across all this decade, and across the projects and all the work that has been done for the development of the climate adaptation toolkits and the creation of the 100 MPA Med Alliance. And just to remember, following on the recommendations and the policy alignment, that the 100 MPA Med Alliance is very relevant and is synchronized with the 2030 Greener Med agenda. And MPAs are duly taken into account into this framework, okay?
Thank you, Fernando. So with that, we will go to the pause, and yes, we'll be back in 10 minutes. Have a good break. So we are back now to. Now we will start with the interactive group session. Okay, so I hope everyone is here. I will start, and if not, we can give you a catch up later. So we will now move into the interactive part of the session, and so we will split in two parallel groups, each approaching the same challenge from a different angle. So group 1 will focus from practice to policy, and it will be facilitated by me, and group 2 will focus from policy to practice and will be facilitated by Maria Jimenez. The objective of both groups is the same, is to assess the feasibility of climate adaptation in the Mediterranean MPAs based on your experience and institutional realities. Each group will be asked to identify 3 priority points, 3 key barriers and enables, and to agree on a short summary that will be presented back in the plenary session. So one of you will present what is agreed in the group. Then in the next slide, we have if you are in group 1, so you can choose either group, the one that is more aligned to your perspective, or the ones that you are more interested to get into. So that's fine. So more or less, we would like to have the same amount of people in both groups. If you are in group 1, we will focus on moving from practice to policy. And the idea here is to start from what is happening or could realistically happen on the ground in MPAs. And we will discuss which adaptation actions are most feasible, which are more difficult to implement, and what are the main barriers. We will also reflect on which enable conditions are already in place and share concrete examples from your own MPAs. To support the discussion, we will use a matrix, feasibility impact, to help to prioritize these actions. And the aim is to translate practical experience into clear message from policy to institutional decision making. So all this discussion, we will make it with Miro. If you are not familiar with the tool, we will share these two links also to access to the boards. We can give you a quick overview of how to use the tool. So you can write, actively write, but if not, we can assist you, no worries. And for the group 2, we will take the opposite perspective, that will be from policy to practice. And here the discussion will focus on which policy decisions could most efficiently accelerate climate adaptation in MPAs. So you will reflect on regulatory gaps that currently limit the progress, which measures under the framework such as the nature restoration regulation, SABIO, EMAP, and EU biodiversity strategy that Maria was discussing before are most urgent. And you will also discuss what type of financing mechanisms are needed to move from policy commitments to real implementation on the ground. It's such a short time, so it will be just a discussion between us. Of course, you cannot, arrive to big conclusions, but it would be great to brainstorm a bit between us. The objective is to identify concrete policy levers that could make adaptation more feasible for MPA managers. And after, we will go to the main group, to the feedback from groups. Okay, so I hope everything is clear. So you will choose one of these two groups that Fernando will open. We have 30 minutes, and we will have 2 Miro boards, one per group, to work with. And all this is based also on the fact sheets that we made, but no need to read them now in depth. But it's a base, and they are summarized in these boards that we will work on the actions. No, the actions are there. Okay. Hi, Maria. How was within your group? Did you manage to kind of finish the dynamic?
It was very interesting. We have discussing so much about the question, but unfortunately we have not enough time. But well, I think that we can
No worries. The important part is the discussion. So you have an assigned speaker. If not, we can assign now for summarizing how went the session.
Yes, I have a volunteer.
Fantastic. Okay. So yes, so if that's okay for you, yeah, I don't mind. If I can, should I go first and then later you, or you prefer to go first?
I can go first if you want.
Okay,
It's gonna be
fantastic.
easy because
Yeah.
we just didn't have the time to articulate all this challenge. So would like to be honest and maybe if it's possible, keep the meter open for later on finish it up because there was a lot of interest in the group, but we just don't have the solid plenary sharing items.
Yes. Okay, fantastic. Can you summarize a bit what you were discussing and, give some insights? Maybe you can share the whiteboard or, so everyone can see it and briefly discuss what you were talking.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Just give me a second.
Yes, we can keep that open, of course, and you can keep if you would like to contribute with more ideas, more than welcome.
Okay, Jose, just tell me where to go and I'll follow your lead.
Okay. Well, basically, we were choosing. We got a bit stuck in understanding the first bit on framing the questions that we wanted to address. There was two main questions. So you can zoom in. Yeah, it was number 3 and 5. Yes, the 3 was about harmonizing all the indicators because there is a lot of diversity and incoherence, let's say. And then the 5th, it was more supporting the local MPA managers, right? And then we found out that number 3, let's say the harmonization of indicators would have high impact, but had a lot of difficulty because of coordination at all levels, right? And agreements. But 5th could be easier, let's say, if we don't consider resource scarcity. And it would be also high impact because then the local MPA managers will have better fit to do efficient vigilance and monitoring of MPA. Then we move a bit to the discussions as well, and it was, thank you. Yeah, I defended also the legal side of the mandates that are basic for dropping down to communities and regional administrations and so on. And then there was another highlight there, as you can see, the international guidelines, right, that help understand where to go. In the bottlenecks for implementation, there was obvious coordination challenges. And then we can go down to regulatory and governance. Weak enforcement, exactly. So one thing is the paper, and then how we are actually implementing those. The last bit, as you can see, the MedPan seems to be a very useful platform for all MPA's efficiency implementation and resource provision and coordination. But there was also some funding sparks there, right, that are helpful for this. And if we can move a bit to what evidences we have in enabling these policies and governances. I did write most of them, so I was very propositive here. So this again doesn't include the entire group discussion, but I was pointing out mainly the EU Mission Ocean assets. There are many, and the natural capital accounting for governments and institutions to understand the importance and the relevance. And now we got stuck in the group synthesis and so on. So this.
Yeah, it's great. You managed to discuss a lot, and then then you say 3 and 5 that are. Can you?
Yeah, again, harmonizing
the climate change indicators.
and And the support to the local MPA managers.
Yes.
So
Okay.
these two were the biggest points that we saw if we had to choose, because there was a lot of discussion also on the framing the challenge.
Yes. Thank you for sharing. Are there any questions to the group? You can raise your hand or write in the chat. If not, we can move to the other one, also to share where's our discussion. I will share the screen, and then I'm just looking. Gail, are you there? Yeah. Okay. So Gail, I leave you, to speak through. Yeah, here it is. Our group. Yeah, I start with board by board as well. Is that fine?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Amazing. So, hi everyone. My name is Gail Murphy. I'm the management team of an MPA in Malta. Our group was discussing, obviously, from the practice side of things, so the more implementation side of things, as opposed from the top down. So we were exploring these actions in terms of which ones were the ones to focus on, and quite across the board, integrating climate adaptation into MPA management and planning was coming up a lot with people's selections, as well as it looks like a bit of a toss-up between 3 and 5 in terms of the ones that were kind of easy or more important, I would say. So in terms of ecological restoration and also climate indicators. However, then when we moved over to which ones are actually easy to implement as well as give high impact, then things start to change a little bit. So things such as citizen science or the nature-based solutions are actually easier in some ways to implement than some of the more high impact things that take a little more time in terms of larger implementation. So there was an interesting discussion that we had. So for us, it was much easier to implement within the management plan because we have a very strong relationship with our governance stakeholders. However, for some people, it's much easier to focus on the smaller activities like citizen science because you don't need any legislation or legal backing, or you're kind of owning that yourself. So I think that there's a bit of a low-hanging fruit that is easy to kind of access in terms of climate adaptation implementation, and then some things that are going to take more time and more discussions depending on the country setup within the MPA. Then we explored, obviously, the feasible ones, the difficult ones, the barriers and the enablers. So in terms of the easy ones, things like the fish visuals, which I'm guessing is the same that we call the fish surveys in Malta. So these things and temperature monitoring are very low budget. They're things where they can be done by other people, normal people, citizen science. These things are relatively easy to implement. It doesn't say why, but someone has wrote that they already have an existing program in terms of volunteers or youths. For us, it's a low budget implementation, so it's quite easy to do. Difficult actions. I found it was interesting to speak about restoration and the shocks, so other people's opinions about what we're doing or not doing, and lack of policy facilitators. So again, it's to do with this stakeholder relationship in terms of whether people are on board or not on board, and funding and HR obviously always has an implement. So then we had barriers. So again, it's mostly about resources, so funding, time, staff, manpower. It's the usual stuff that we suffer working in marine conservation. It's nothing rocket science here. It's the usual things that are arising. So then we moved into the enablers. So obviously support from EU funding. A lot of discussion was had around partnerships and networking. So not just, med-wide, but also in terms of how to create partnerships and good networks within your region to support kind of cross stakeholders, and actually to exchange experiences and to help share with each other. These things have a bigger impact, I think, often than we realize. So then there were some case studies. So this is people speaking about things that are happening in the MPA. So in terms of monitoring or citizen science that's already implemented. Finding new MPAs.
Yeah, sorry, I put it bigger.
Change of population's behavior according to the climate. Yes, again, so it's this utilizing the biodiversity or what is actually happening within the sea to have an impact. So that's cool. And then what was the last one? Oh yeah, group synthesis. So yeah, overall priority actions based on what's easy, but also what's impactful, citizen science, and also integrating the climate adaptation actually into the management planning. So it's actually there on the table as something that's important for MPAs. Main barriers, HR, funding, and again, this responsibility, this stakeholder, how to bring people together really in terms of the stakeholder objectives and tasks and responsibilities and how to make that work. And key enablers would again be funding from EU projects and partnerships and networking. That's my summary of our...
Thank you very much for this great summary, and I really positively surprised, no, how much we arrived and discussed in such a short time, no? So, but you are more than welcome to add more things we will keep this open. So now if there are any questions, if not, we will move to the next speakers. Any questions for the group? Okay, so then yes, again, thank you for sharing your ideas, and yeah, fantastic. We will come back to we have 2 more presentations today that are the case studies, so more applicable. And then, okay, so here, yeah, thank you, Sophia. So we will now move to 2 concrete lighthouse case studies from the 100 MPA-MED Alliance. These examples illustrate how MPA4Change tools are already being applied on the ground to support climate adaptation while strengthening day-to-day MPA management. Together, they show how adaptation actions can increase overall ecological and institutional resilience. So I'm pleased to give the floor to Lorenzo Merotto, followed by Andrea Blaskovic, who will present the experiences from Portofino MPA and also from Briuni National Park. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Today I'm alone because Andrea is sick, so she trusts that I will not say something wrong. So yeah, next please. So where are we? I'm from Portofino Marine Protected Area that is in the north of Italy, in the Ligurian Sea. It's a very small area because it's the third smallest in Italy, 346 hectares. It's almost more than 25 years old. The morphology is a cliff that continue underwater, and our main habitat are coralligenous, rocky bottom in general, coralligenous and seagrass. The area is, the marine protected area is divided in 3 different zones from not take, non enter to partial reserve zone. So next please. Briuni is on the other side, let's say, of Italy because it's in Croatia, in the North Adriatic Sea. So we are one of the northern MPAs in the Mediterranean. It's an archipelago near Pula, and also Briuni is divided in several protected zones, with different zone. It was before to be a national park, was the residence of the President Tito of in Croatia. So this is the archipelago with a lot of biodiversity, but the main area of the National Park of Briuni is marine. Next, please. So we are the 2 lighthouse in the medallions because we were involved in this process from many years, from the different MPA something, MPA Adapt, MPA Engage, and MPA4Change project. And so it's almost 9 years that we perform this kind of activity. All the toolkit proposed in MPA4Change and then in the Med Alliance are multi-use toolkit because it are not addressed only to climate change, but are very useful for the daily management of the MPA, of an MPA in general. So next, please. So the main idea, this is something that I say before, is that climate change is something not under our control locally and in general, I think, but the human impact amplify the impact of the climate change. So what we can do is to make all the habitat, also the species, more resilient and less sensitive to the climate change, decreasing the direct human impact, like the one on, for example, in this picture. Next, please. So first of all, we have to know what's happened underwater. So we have this 11 standard protocol that can assess. Are quite simple. So you don't have to be a very professional researcher, but it's something suitable also for an MPA, because you generally in MPA you don't have so many times, so many staff, so many money. And the good thing is that they provide you can perform this and have very simply some data, a lot of data, and provide you also an assessment of the status of your MPA. Next, please. For example, some of these protocols, maybe two of the three most important are the sea temperature, monitored with the data loggers and some data loggers from HOBO, and the mass mortality. For example, here there are some picture from a mortality event in Portofino in 2023. So you can, it's very simple to understand what's happened underwater, and all data have to be put in the TMedNet platform that can provide you a lot of feedback. And for example, this graph of Bruni temperature desertification. On the other side, it's very important because help to have all the data of the climate change in a unique platform. Next, please. So another very useful toolkit is the local ecological knowledge, because allow you to reconstruct the fish population in the past, understand, for example, using all fishermen, like in this picture, to understand how the fish population change through the year, through the 30 or more year. And on the other side, this process help you also in the participatory approach that are very vital for an MPA. Next, please. Another toolkit similar from some point of view is citizen science, because with the right training, the divers, for example, can be a big ally, because they can help you to gather data, obtain data, so engage people, and start some quite serious participatory approach. In this toolkit, in our case, we put the mass mortality, that is the same that I showed you before, the fish visual census that I don't show you, but is inside the 11 protocols, and also the Pinna Nobilis fast assessment if it's present yet in your territory. Next, please. So one of the most hard maybe work to do, but on the other side, the one that provide you a lot of information very useful for the management is the vulnerability assessment. Now I can not tell you what the how to do a vulnerability assessment because I think I need a month or more, but it provide you the vulnerability from climate change point of view, but not only of your MPA in complex. And next slide, please. Also from your species point of view, the forecast for the future in different time scenario. For example, this is to 2100, but it can be also 250 in different emission scenario, and show you what species can be the most vulnerable. Next, please. But also the stakeholder. And so it's very useful also for the participatory approach to make the stakeholder understand that their activity is impacted from the climate change, for example. And this tool is very useful for two things. The first is the participatory approach. Next, please. So the participatory approach can be, I think, in an MPA life is something necessary, and you need to do to have a good and effective management. You can do in many ways. There are some guidelines, but you have to involve your people, let's say your user, your stakeholder, in many times, regularly and in many ways. Next, please. So you can engage people in general in your activity, raise awareness, train people to act, and passing to the policymaker. If you have the stakeholder by your side, it's more simple to convince the policymaker to do something. It's not 100%, but let's say 80% probable. And so you have any way to dialogue, also if it's very, very difficult. And the toolkit on the participatory approach of MPA4Change provide you some guidelines very, very useful from this point of view. Next, please. For example, the participatory approach is also very, very important for the adaptation plan that at the end of the day is the last results that you need, in the sense that is the end of the process, but it provides you some measure that can be implemented in the management plan of the MPA. And for do this process, you have to involve your stakeholder in many ways with meeting, sometimes also with Google Form, and help you, and they can help you to elaborate some measure. Next, please. I almost finished. For example, here there is one of the measure in Portofino to preserve coralligenous. So the coralligenous in our case is one of the habitat most impacted by the climate change, with mass mortality of keystone species. But some restriction for fishermen and divers, because also divers do some damage, can help to preserve coralligenous. These measures were voted, in our case, both from fishermen, or representative of fishermen, representative of divers. This is a restriction for fishermen and divers, so it seems that doesn't fit with climate change. But as I say before, the decreasing the impact from human in general can help the habitat and the species to resist more to the climate change. Next, please. Here there is the joint adaptation plan of all the partners of an MPA engage, and there are several kind of measures, so capacity building, protection, restoration, research, and monitoring economic. So the economic help the stakeholder to survive, let's say technological, that both, and regulation and governance. And next, please. And here, I don't want you to read all of them, but there are some of the measures elaborating in all the MPAs of MPA4Change and MPA Engage. So can be like inspirational for the other MPA, and these measures are perfect to be put in the management plan of the MPA. Sorry, I finished. I used 3 minutes more, but I tried to be fast as possible.
That's fantastic, Lorenzo. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it was super interesting also to know, and for sure it's a great example to follow in other MPAs. What you have done in Portofino MPA and they have done in Brittany National Park. So we now have a bit of time for questions. So no worries, we're within the time. We managed to be within the time. Yes, see a question from Sue that just came through. Okay, hi Sue. I will read it. Okay, straight away. Have any of these toolkits been used at any MPA as a part of the assessment of management? Hi Sue. Would you like to say your question maybe? Isha, so you are there, or would you like me to read?
Okay, sorry, difficulty unmuting.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi everybody. Sorry, I had to pop out, so I've just rejoined again, but I caught the end of that presentation, which I thought was brilliant. That was great, and I'm sure you're all aware of all these initiatives to assess management effectiveness and equitable governance and conservation outcomes in general, primarily for adaptive management, which is what I think you're all looking at here with these toolkits, in the context of climate change, of course, but also from the point of view of reporting come 2030. And I'm sort of working with IUC and WCPA on a lot of this and trying to sort of tie things up, because there are, as you all know, an enormous number of toolkits. And I mentioned one earlier in the chat because that was an EU initiative, which seems to have disappeared. But I was wondering if anybody's actually looked at these individual toolkits, would help, I think, in components of these generalized assessment tools, which cover a whole range of activities and don't necessarily have sort of nice drop down questions and answers or boxes that you could use. And I don't know at all whether any of you are familiar with things like the Management Effectiveness Tracking Tool, which is the most commonly used one. But there are many others that countries are adapting. They don't just apply to marine, they apply to terrestrial as well. And they help you to see how well your MPA is progressing. So it's an important thing to do anyway. And the results of them can then be used for reporting, both nationally and globally. But the difficulty is, of course, they cover this whole range from governance through to conservation outcomes and actual day-to-day operational management. So these much smaller toolkits could really, I think, help people work out how they could be collecting the data, because it's all, in order to do good adaptive management, you do need to be collecting data on all these things in order to see what works and what doesn't work. So I just wanted to say that, whether anybody's made that kind of linkage, because I do know that we're rather getting a sort of proliferation of people looking at these things. I think climate change is a very good sort of umbrella to force people to try and pull everything together. So anyway, it was just throwing that out as a question, really.
Thank you, Sue. Yeah, I don't know. Sana also raised the hand. You would like to tackle that question, or yeah, Sana?
Sorry, just 1 second. I need to give the floor to Sana.
Okay. Yes,
There you are,
thank you,
Sana.
Fernando. Okay.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, okay, I'm Sanna Juvonen from Europark Federation, and just about information about management effectiveness. We are currently leading a EU-funded project, a life project working on management effectiveness, so Life PAME Europe project, and there we are making a framework for management effectiveness that would be a quick tool to look at management effectiveness at the site and at the system level. So and we are working on that. There will be pilot sites that are testing it. We also have some marine sites that have applied. We are now working on the selection of the sites. So this is something that's happening at the moment. We're very closely working with DG Environment and European Environment Agency in this. If anybody's interested, we can find. I can put the link to the project link, the webpage link to the chat. But we are also forming this management effectiveness community. So if anybody's interested in this, please join and be part of the framework development. We're very, very interested to get people involved and helping us to develop this framework that would help us get some idea of how we're doing with our particular areas, whether they are terrestrial or marine areas. And of course, this is not going to replace any of the other existing tools. They are valid, they are good, but they look at the idea is to look at them from a little bit of different perspective, from covering the reporting tasks that we have, but also give the particular area managers a tool where they can look at how they are doing with their own management in their own area. Thank you.
Thank you, Sana. Sue, did you raise your hand again? Would you like to reply? Yeah, maybe we can give the floor to Sue again, if that's okay. And then we are on time, so we will then afterwards close the session.
Sorry, Sue, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, just quickly, Sana, that's really interesting to know. I mean, the EU, it's no criticism of any of the projects at all. It's more of the EU itself. The EU has gone through this process about, I can't actually remember how many years ago. There is a tool, a very good tool was produced. So I just hope you've got that. You're nodding your head, so hopefully you know about that. But again, a bit like the climate change resilience tool that the EU funded, again, about 5 years ago, they just disappear from the scene. And one doesn't know if they go, it's all quite expensive because they go through this pilot testing and then they're not used. I mean, it's great if you're building on it, but I think we need to push from the bottom up that the EU, when they develop things like this, that they then also include in the project a real way of rolling them out so that countries can use them, because, well, we are very anxious that having sort of been in the business for a long time at the endless similar projects being done over again without the funding agencies looking at what they've supported before. But I think you're all well informed, so I'm sure nothing's sort of wasted, but anyway, it's just a point.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. And that's why also we developed these 2 policy briefs, to go from the tools to the policy and action. And yes, so then I think now it's time to close. If you can share the presentation again, Sophia, so we go to the last 2 slides. Thank you everyone for their comments and their contributions.
Sorry, Patricia. If I may, just a quick comment following on Sue's question. Sue, thank you very much, and Sana as well for introducing PAME project. But Sue, just following on your question or suggestion, because I can take that also as a suggestion. I think it's a really critical point, an important point that you are raising. Just to clarify, when we in MPA4Change, when we talk about management effectiveness, is management effectiveness strictly applied to the improving management to achieve conservation objectives through the integration of climate change into the management plan. So we use different tools to integrate the measurement and adapt adaptation, to climate change. And that will improve management effectiveness because it will help us to better achieve conservation objectives. I think this is a really small part within the whole management effectiveness improvement and assessment and evaluation processes that are out there and through which we are carrying out, for example, this project. And so you're really an expert in this area. So it's just a clarification. When we speak about management effectiveness in MPA4Change, we speak specifically about improving how we can achieve conservation objectives. So, okay, but I think it's really interesting your point, and I will encourage anybody that has any specific example or that can contribute to improve management effectiveness in marine protected areas to get in contact with us so we can assess the viability to incorporate these examples. Okay, thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Fernando, for the clarification. And then to conclude, today's discussion has shown that MPAs are technically ready to act on climate adaptation, but what is needed now is to support to have supporting policy frameworks, stable financing, and stronger regional coordination. Through MPA4Change and the 100 MPA-MED Alliance, we aim to bridge this gap between readiness and implementation, and we invite you to join the Alliance, apply the MPA4Change toolkits, and stay engaged through the training and expert networks. Thank you very much, all of you, for your participation, for your active participation. And now I will give back the floor to Fernando to close the session.
Thank you very much. And yes, I was going to ask you to move to the next slide. Yes, I mentioned before, but the 100 MPA-MED Alliance has a dedicated website through which you can contact us. I leave you also the email of the 100 MPA-MED Alliance. Remember that MPA4Change will be closing during this month, even though we will still remain active until March. But it's important that, it's clear that we will follow our work through the 100 MPA-MED Alliance communication channels. We also have a LinkedIn page. And with that, just stay in touch, contact us for any interest that you may have. And thank you very much.